Commander Varkel had reduced 219 alien biologies to neat case files over the course of his 30-year tenure at the Interstellar Survival Institute. He wore that ledger like armor. The kelth with their 7 regenerative limbs, catalogued. The silica thresh that gnawed stones into nutrition, logged. The daredevil Vortan who boasted his clan-hunted sky whales, archived, after 3 days of keening and pleading for his matron. So when Administrator Silnex slid into his office that morning, all 7 ocular stalks flicking with the same unreadable expression. Varkel expected paperwork, not a plot twist. "We have an applicant for your advanced cohort," Silnex said, the translator flattening her clicking mandibles into trained calm. Varkel kept his eyes on his slate. "Another Kelth? Excellent. A Terran specifically requested your track by name." One stalk tilted, the motion faintly smug. The name made him look up. Humans. Small, squishy, and historically predictable. "From Terra," he said. "They're from that temperate garden world, right? Mild weather, gentle seas. Should I prepare infantry modules or skip right to the diploma?" "The human requested your course, the one with the emergency retrieval clause." Silnex's stalk spread wider like someone enjoying a private joke. Varkel scrolled. The course he'd designed had the kind of attrition statistics that made other instructors blanch. He felt, briefly, the old twitch of pride. "Fine. I'll review their physiology packet." Silnex laughed, a sound like pebbles clacking. "You should read the updated planetary report before she arrives. Terra has evolved things." He waved her off. "Probably allergies. Or dramatic weather." The shuttle disgorged 1 human 2 days later. She stepped from the airlock with a worn duffel, academy fatigue trousers, and an expression of someone who considered a 3-week jumpgate trip slightly inconvenient, like a commuter catching a later tram. She did a single flare of motion that betrayed no awe, a neck crack that popped audibly through the reinforced observation glass. Varkel watched and felt the old assumptions chip. She was small, yes, barely chest-high to a crot, with hair the color of oxidized metal and thin skin that suggested vulnerability. Practical, he catalogued. She'd fail admirably. "Name?" he intoned on the landing bay speakers. "Maya Carter." She met his hologram without ceremony. "Instructor Varkel. I'm Maya. How hard is this class?" Varkel recited the litany of horrors he'd designed. Toxic atmospheres, gravitational strain, corrosive mists, predatory fauna, simulated famine. 60% finish unscarred. 30% need extended care. 10%, he paused, letting the scale sink in, are recovered by the retrieval teams. "Cool." She slung her bag higher. "Is there a coffee dispensary, or should I have packed beans?" Varkel's left ocular ticked. "Coffee. There is a canteen on Deck C. 60 minutes to your quarters. Training begins at 0900. Be punctual." She ducked into the corridor before he'd finished. He watched the tail of her jacket disappear and had the uncomfortable sensation that he had, perhaps, misfiled Terra. The acclimation wing, Varkel called it the Gauntlet, filled an entire northern arc. It could fake sulfur howls and methane blizzards. It could make bone ache and breath rasp. Species typically lasted minutes. Varkel dialed the chamber to -40 degrees Celsius and watched Maya in her issued fatigues. She hugged herself and hopped, muttering about cold winters. "Minnesota," she offered to herself. The Institute sensors logged the usual spike in metabolic distress. Varkel smirked into the intercom and announced the protocol. "Remain inside until extraction or until your core temp drops below safe thresholds." An instructor's predictable symphony followed. Teeth chatter, panic, the usual tapping of the override. Maya walked the circumference at a steady pace. She rubbed red fingers, stamped, then, impossibly, started jogging in place. 20 minutes came and went. Varkel raised the chamber by 20 degrees. She adjusted her jacket and grinned at the camera. "This is brisk. Better than my last winter run." Silnex cruised up the observation catwalk and narrowed stalks at the human. "She persists. Humans have thermal habits we do not understand," Silnex noted. "Or they're simply dense." Varkel kept the room swinging between Arctic and furnace. Maya adapted as if switching thermostat modes. Her internal readings suggested mild exertion at worst. He ended the test baffled. Next, the toxic air array. Varkel prized the chamber that tested panic under partial filtration, a cocktail that had ended more than one career. Maya was given a standard mask and briefed on the simulated irritants. When the flow began, she sniffed theatrically. "Smells like a public pool and an egg," she said into the comm. "You upgraded the menu?" Within minutes, the chamber's integrity failed, a hairline tear in the outer vent. Alarms shuddered through the facility as trace concentrations leaked into the observation tunnel. The emergency purge engaged. Hazmat teams mobilized. Varkel coughed and tasted metallic overexposure. Maya stepped into the Deccan like she'd interrupted a picnic. The medic scanner showed lungs pristine. No inflammation. No absorption. Nothing. Varkel scrolled through the human physiology dossier until the top line of the summary strangled him. Warning: review entire planetary assessment before conducting live exposures. Terra upgraded. Death class reassessment in effect. He'd missed the update. The gravity simulator was a luxury the director had approved after a delegation from High G Worlds complained. It could fold gravity up to 8 times standard. Varkel invited 2 heavy gravity trainees and a Thorian, a rock-like seer of stone, to keep Maya company. She arrived in the same rumpled fatigues. When he offered her a support harness, she waved it off. "I want to see how this feels." Also leg day. At twice gravity, the crowd grunted. At 3, one trainee knelt. At 4, the Thorian's skin seared faintly under the strain. Maya did lunges. At 5, the Thorian tapped out and maintenance hovered like vultures. Varkel pushed it to the maximum. The observation glass groaned. Instruments began to whine. Maya lay on her back, breath ragged, sweat darkening fabric. "Okay," she said after a long minute. "This is a legit workout. Give me 5 more minutes." She tapped out at 12 minutes. The simulator tripped circuits at 8 and smoked. Varkel's belief that Terran biologies were fragile split apart and reformed into unease. He spent the next hours reading the planetary reassessment file. Terra's new classification, a level 12 death world, glared from the margins. Chaotic weather systems, violent geology, hyper-competitive ecology. Evolution on Terra had been a spiteful sculptor. Maya survived the predators with a tactic Varkel hadn't taught. She refused to play prey. In the predator domes, 3 engineered ravagers released on a 20-minute hunt. Most trainees sprinted and hid. Maya sighed, stood cross-legged as the pack closed to ambush distance, and spoke to them like she was settling misbehaving pets. One by one, the creatures hesitated, then sat. The third lowered its head against her knee. She spent the remainder of the time soothing them. The arena cameras recorded an instructor in passive meltdown and a cohort of ravagers that had apparently been socialized in the wrong century. Between breathless vacuum tests and radiation exposures that left Maya sunburned and mildly annoyed rather than scoured, Varkel's files rearranged themselves into a new taxonomy. Not invulnerable, not immortal, but tenacious, adaptable, and bizarrely low maintenance. When an emergency sounded from the Biodome, a restricted section housing Celian thorns with spores that induced paralysis, the footage froze Varkel in his tracks. Maya sat cross-legged among the toxic foliage, calmly eating a container of mixed rations. Hazmat teams panicked. The toxins should have felled her in minutes. She peered up, surprised, asking if the signage had been posted in a different dialect. She finished her meal, packed away the container, and waved at the cameras. Varkel watched her then, the casual bravery of someone who had been taught to treat danger the way other cultures treat thunderstorms, inconvenient but survivable. The Institute board convened when his incident reports hit 74 in a few days. Director Thex Nalen, a somber thing of chitin and polished carapace, did not smile. "You were briefed?" Thex asked. Varkel recited the truth. He had read the update 3 days ago. He had not expected a Terran to be grant ambitious. Now the record showed Terra's formal reclassification had been issued 8 months prior. The board had deliberately placed a human in his cohort to observe, to provoke discovery. And, Thex asked, And she will change protocols, Varkel said flatly. We'll have to re-rate our equipment. We may need whole new curricula. When the graduation came, the main hall shimmered with species and physiologies. Maya stood at the front, ordinary, almost disappointingly terrestrial. The Ravagers were seated in the first row as if she'd brought friends. Varkel took the podium with a speech he had started and abandoned many times. Maya Carter, he said, voice steadier than he felt. You scored above every projected threshold in environmental resilience, cognitive adaptability under duress, and interspecies response. You have forced a revision of our assumptions. For that, though it terrifies me, you have my respect. Maya accepted the certification with a grin. Thanks. The corrosive fog was wild. Could have used more coffee. She stepped down. The crowd buzzed with a new vocabulary. Reassessment, recalibration, Terra-level protocols. The board members shuffled, some excited, some queasy. After, Varkel sat alone with an old ledger. The number of species he'd broken crossed out and updated in his head. He'd taught for decades and considered himself unflappable. A human had rearranged how he measured flammability and fortitude. Silnex found him and clicked her mandibles. You can request reassignment, she said. We're opening a training facility on Terra. Would you like to volunteer? Varkel's throat muscles tightened. The offer hung between threat and opportunity. He looked toward the biodome where Maya tossed a chew toy for a Ravager. She laughed, a bright human sound, and the creature fetched it with an eager, surprisingly gentle snort. Varkel put his slate down. No, he said at last, and meant something close to grateful. Not yet. He walked back to his office, the catalog of 220 species waiting, and for the first time in 30 years, felt the steady new pressure of being wrong in the best possible way. End.